Hello again everyone and welcome back to the Super Rugby preview. We are up to round number 9 of the competition and we have a cracking amount of matches for this week coming your way as per usual. Now last week we had a great guest in Brett Hartley joining us, and this week we step it up another gear. We've got the Scottish Cannon. Welcome along.
Thank you very much for having me on the Super Rugby preview for round 9.
No worries, thanks for joining me yet again. Now we're going to be doing what we do every week. We're having a look back at round 8, having a look at who sucked this week in the picks, because round 8 was a terrible round to be able to pick. And then of course looking forward to round number 9. But before we do all that, like always, we're going to get the good old counter, and this is going to really get the Scottish Cannon's blood boiling here. Yellow cards, 71. Yellow cards in 9 rounds and 4 red cards. Now, since you're the guest on the show, I normally dribble on for about 10 seconds about how ridiculous these amount of red cards are. Remember, 2016, there was only 85 from memory. What do you have to say about that as a referee yourself?
It all comes really down to the strict foul play rules this year. I think, there was clear directive from World Rugby that, anything high pretty much is going to get a yellow card, while I'm a bit more, I guess, on your side. I'm not always as strict on the yellow cards when I referee. I feel like it's, sometimes it goes a bit over the top, but that's going to, that makes me struggle as a ref. But, I think half of them are justified. I'm sure we'll maybe talk about Lopedi Tamani and, the incident that he had over the weekend and stuff. But you know what? It has to happen. We want to get rid of neck rolls. We want to try and minimize high tackles. It's all for the good of the game in the long term. So, short-term pain for long-term gain.
Yeah, that's not true. I guess fair points. Do you think the refs are more inconsistent this year than other years?
Yeah, I do think so. I think
wow. I didn't expect that out of you.
I'm completely frank when it comes to this sort of stuff. I think I was really harsh on the refs in the opening rounds. I was ranting on Twitter about awful calls that a few people made, and I think the referees have to be accountable for their decisions. I'm not sure why they're more inconsistent this year. Maybe I don't know what you're noticing from a more fan sort of point of view. In regards to what I'm seeing, I think ruck's much more inconsistent this year. I think some teams get penned for for things that other teams don't, and I think offsides are not managed as well as they could be. But I think that's just from my opinion. What are you really noticing this year?
Just inconsistencies in general. Pretty much forward passes is one thing that's been rife this year. Things that sometimes the flat pass getting caught forward, and then the same pass very similar getting not caught forward. I think that's been pretty inconsistent this year. Just general stuff, like say rucks is always going to be a penalty nightmare and a card nightmare, but yeah, forward pass is probably the biggest thing that I've found has been pretty tap and go, whether they get a card or not, or penalised or not, and then giving away. That's my biggest thing on the inconsistencies from the refs. But we're not here to talk about the referees. That's another discussion for another day. Round 8, we're going to be having a quick look back at what happened in round number 8. And of course it all kicked off in Canterbury, where the Crusaders were up against the Sunwolves. Now, Sunwolves of course on the big high after getting their first win of the season against the Bulls, but they were pretty quickly brought back down to earth. The Crusaders thumping them in a pretty big way, 50 points to 3. One team only ever in that game. Did you see it happening any other way?
No, I don't think anyone did. I think on SuperBru, when it came to the tipping, I think only like 200 people out of 100 and something thousand picked the Sunwolves, and obviously that's for legitimate reasons, with the Crusaders being undefeated and the Sunwolves getting their first win of the season against the Bulls in Tokyo. Sunwolves, I don't know what to really say. They're obviously going to struggle against the might of New Zealand. Japanese rugby's on the rise, but, it's just going to take a few years before they even start to test the New Zealand sides, I think.
Yeah, I think their best chance is going to be when teams go there, but we'll probably talk about that more with the preview of the Sunwolves game. Second match of the weekend was the Reds, my new least favourite side that everyone is picking on me about, up against the Kings. Now, this is almost the entertaining game of the weekend. The Kings play some bloody entertaining rugby. They were a joy to watch. Some of those guys in that backline have some ridiculous speed and skill, which, it's a shame that you start to see some of these talents emerge from the Kings, when it's probably going to be too late for these guys.
Absolutely.
The Reds are just one of those teams. I think Quade Cooper did actually lift them quite a bit. They ended up winning 47-34, just like when they played the Force, the Kings, that is. Entertaining matchup, tries are plenty, but neither team cared about defence. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely agree. The Reds, they had the bonus point in the bag. It's 70 minutes in that match, and then the Kings score 3 tries in 8 minutes. The bench of the Reds really, really struggles. We won't touch on the Reds too much, so I'll just quickly make a note that finally getting the bye after traveling all over the world. The Reds, they're being very inconsistent, very unlucky, but they look so much of a better side with Quade Cooper at the helm, and I think they'll make maybe a somewhat mediocre end of season sort of rise, but to getting this second win of the season over South African opposition will do a bit for their confidence, I think.
It's a bit like who's the best of the worst in Australia at the moment, isn't it? When you've got 3 teams who are performing pretty averagely, well, even 4 teams, really. Most of them are performing averagely. But a win's a win. Doesn't matter who it's against. The Reds at least got it over the line. Slender one over the low-flying Kings on tour. They were, better than I thought they were at least going to be. Third match of the weekend. The Blues were at home, and they were up against the Hurricanes. Now, this one, I think, from my point of view, was a lot closer than I expected. The final score was 24-28. The Hurricanes pulling it out. One name, you could probably say, Barrett, once again, shines for the Hurricanes, sees them through. He's just ridiculous this year. Even being compared to the great days of Dan Carter as well, in the form that he's showing. And I mean, last time we seen Dan Carter at his best was, of course, Lions Tour 12 years ago. So maybe, that's the old clock going around with New Zealand rugby. But the Hurricanes did it by 4 points. It was close, it was tight. Were you impressed by the Blues? Is probably the question I'd want to ask you.
Well, I actually picked the Canes to win by 4 points this game, so I got it completely right. I expected this sort of match. I really expected the Blues to get up. It's a home match for them at Eden Park. You expected the home fans to, really push the Blues along with. I think Pulu is really coming into his own this year. I think he's doing really, really well. And, you can see that there's such a better team with Sonny Bill Williams and the Ioane brothers.
Yeah.
The Ioane brothers?
Yep.
Yeah, so I thought I said that wrong. But, they're such a better team with that star-studded backline. And, they are sort of unlucky in the conference that they're in, because if they were in the Australian conference, they'd be top of the table, no problem.
Yeah, they were easily. Yeah, Sonny Bill's made a massive difference since coming back off the bench in that last match for them, but starting again, he's only going to get better. And I don't know, who can criticise the state of New Zealand rugby at the moment when, you got the talents that's going around. You look at those two teams. The Blues look better and better each week, and they're going to be tough to really call against. But they went down again, and their season is looking a bit shaky, but they're going to need to pick up some wins pretty soon. Now, back in Australia we went. And I'm going to leave this one completely to you, because you're the Australian expert.
Yeah.
Rebels 19, Brumbies 17. What you got?
No one expected this at all. I think it was a week from hell in Australian rugby, obviously with the Super Rugby announcement that an Australian team was going to be cut. The Rebels, the Force, both on the table, in the media this week, last week. Rebels, come out and slamming the ARU and, obviously all this off-field drama. No one expected them to get up at all. Obviously the Brumbies, top of the Australian conference, being dominating a lot of teams, being the losses that they have had were by 7 points or less. So, I mean, no one expected the Rebels to win this game, but man, oh man, what a performance from the Rebels. But, I mean, this is the point. The Brumbies outscored them in worth of tries. Rebels, 4 penalty goals. That's the difference, was the penalty goals. Brumbies just gave away penalties in bad position for the Rebels, and the Rebels gained from the ill discipline of the Brumbies. But talking of such, those Rebels of ill discipline as well. They were down to 13 players for a moment in time, and I'm sure, I don't know if you want to talk about Tamani now or later, but,
You go for it. It was in that match. So
yeah,
go for it.
The Rebels should have gone to a red card in that match. A clear knee to the head with intent. Glenn Jackson thought it was only a yellow card because it only grazed the head of the Brumbies player. But you know what? If that was a red card, it would have been a different scoreline, I think.
Yeah, it was amazing how the Rebels didn't really lose anything when they lost those players. It was a match where you watched it and the Brumbies always seemed to be dominating and controlling, and if you didn't see the score, or you're missing 5 minutes, every now and then, you just presume the Brumbies were leading by a good margin, because they just always seemed to be in control and dominating the most parts of the match. And then, just at the end, it was like, shit, this is actually really, really close. It's actually tight. And the Rebels just somehow, like say, mistakes from the Brumbies pulled that out. And yeah, that knee to the head was pretty bad. Like we spoke about on Twitter the other night about it. That suspension, 4 weeks, I think it was, that you were showing us there. Fair enough too. Like I'm always one that you want the fairest match on the field, but intent to injure someone like that, or to hurt someone like that in that way, you don't need that in rugby at all. I mean, tackling someone and they get injured, that's part of the game. But just straight out hitting someone or striking someone in that way, I don't have any time for that whatsoever. So I wouldn't have been too annoyed to see that one given a red either. But the Rebels, they did it, and that was a real middle finger to the ARU and the whole Sanzar rubbish for teams as well, picking up a win over the top team in Australian rugby, Super Rugby at the moment. But that's a 2-point win, 19-17. Credit to the Rebels to get that one over. Next up, we went to South Africa, and the Cheetahs were up against the Chiefs. Now, this one was where I was almost staying up till God knows what time it was. I was up watching these games on Saturday night. But the Cheetahs, an amazing game. Kicking off from the start, leading 24-0 over the Chiefs. 24-0. And then you lose 41-27. A game of ridiculous contrasting halves. The Cheetahs looked so good. They dominated. Something sparked in those Chiefs, and it just completely changed that match on its head. And the Cheetahs had nothing to offer. It was entertaining, but boy, oh boy, it was a crazy, crazy game. What were your thoughts on that one, the Chiefs' big comeback? It's almost reminiscent of what we've seen from the Crusaders earlier in the season, just a bigger margin.
Absolutely. I think that when I saw the score, I had the early night, so I only saw the first 20-30 minutes. But, Cheetahs were up 24-0 at that point, and I'm like, one of my SuperBru picks are going to be down the drain. I had the Chiefs by, I think, 9 or something. So, I expected the Chiefs to fully get up. They had one of the slowest starts I've ever seen them have. But I think the Chiefs, I had them 5-6 weeks into the season being the New Zealand favourites in the conference. I'm not sure about the Chiefs anymore, to be honest. I think the Chiefs are sort of... they're a bit vulnerable, I must say. I don't know what your take on the Chiefs are, but I think there's a couple other New Zealand sides are ahead of the Chiefs at the moment. Yeah,
I think the same thing. I've agreed completely. But you got to remember they are in South Africa. And you got to remember a lot of the teams, haven't gone there yet, or they went there earlier on. But I think, people watch that and they see that scoreline and watch that game and they say, yeah, great work by the Chiefs, to come back and crush them like they did, which is all well and good. But like I said earlier in the season about the Crusaders, there's still 40-50 minutes there that your team is playing like absolute rubbish. It only takes a half-decent team that's going to be able to say, shut up shop for the last half an hour. And a good enough team will be able to do that if they've got a 20-point lead. They got a bit lucky against the Cheetahs, whether they fell asleep or whether they pushed too hard, it was hard to say, but you look at the positives that they come back nicely, but you got to look at the other side of things that they played really poorly for that first half of the game. But you can only play what's in front of you, and they come away with the win, and a 2-2 win in South Africa is especially of that proportion as well. It's nothing to be scoffed at either way. 41-27, big win for the Chiefs over the Cheetahs. Very surprising result. Both halves were just crazy. Next match was equally interesting as well. This was a great round 8. The Stormers were hosting the Lions. Now, alongside, I think you as well, picked the Stormers for this one, did you?
Yep.
So we're all going for the Stormers. Undefeated going into round 8 along with the Crusaders. They were setting up the perfect round 9 matchup as well, which would have been amazing. The two only undefeated sides. But the Lions... Now, I've seen some great attack by the Lions. They've been, an improvising team, great attack, great players, entertaining rugby. But one thing from the Lions that I took from that match was an amazing defensive effort. something I've not seen a huge amount of from the Lions. They just defended like nothing else. The Stormers were building a small village inside their 22. They were there for that long. And somehow the Lions kept them out, and they scored some great points throughout. To keep the Stormers to 16 is a great effort. And the Lions picking up 29 themselves. It was an amazing match. It was always one of those games that you just watch in disbelief. A team that you don't really trust to defend their line so well, doing it amazingly. What did you think of that one?
I was just shocked as much as anyone else was. You know, the Stormers. The thing with the Stormers was the 6 straight wins in a row. They weren't against the best opposition in the world. Obviously, the Lions. This was their. The Lions have been they were 5-1 coming into the round, and I can't remember they lost to. Did they lose to the Jaguars or? I don't know if you.
The Lions. I'll find out who they've lost to.
I think the big win for the Lions, obviously last year's finalists. I think they completely deserve the result, obviously. And I think they go in to be South Africa's best team at the moment. I don't think anyone's really touching them. Obviously, the Sharks are close to them as well, the Stormers. But, man, oh man, I think the Lions, they are going to go far this year, just like they did last year.
Yeah, they're going to be a threat. Yeah, you're right. They did lose in round 3. To the Jaguars, 36-24 was that scoreline. So that was a bit of a shock, a loss for them, really. But again, it was in Argentina, so that's always a hard place to go. And speaking of that, final match of the round was, of course, the Bulls hosting the Jaguars. Now, this one was interesting because it's the first time we've really seen the better side of the Jaguars since they've actually started winning games on the road. Going to play the Bulls, who will be absolutely livid with how they played against the Sunwolves. Two very contrasting teams here. The Bulls, to their credit, got it done, but so much reliance in that team on a couple players, namely Pollard, more than anything. He is their only real player of note that's going to win them any games. 26-13. Questions, though, about the Jaguars on the road. They just weren't up to their standard. I think if they're not at home, they're not the same team, much like the Sunwolves as well. We're going to see from them on their tour as well. But the Bulls, I still don't think this is going to kickstart this season. I don't think they're really up to it. Ever since they've thrown away their attacking structure that they were building up last year, it's really taken them back a step a few years, I reckon. And they got that win, which is credit to them. I didn't pick it. I had the Jaguars to win that one because I thought their form, but the road just too much. What do you think about that game?
Completely agree. I went the Jaguars as well. Expected them to win, expected pretty much the Argentinian side to carry the line here, but they didn't. They didn't. The Bulls. I don't know what happened within the space of 1 week. Obviously, coming off a big loss to the Sunwolves, and then coming back it up against probably one of the form sides in the competition. Obviously, I think they're 5-2 maybe coming into the 4-2 or 5-2. 4 or 5-2 coming into the round, and really they should have got up for the match here, the Jaguars, but unfortunately they just didn't show the Argentinian flair that they're renowned for.
Yeah, they're 4-3, just to confuse you even more. So there we go. But no, they should have. I thought they would have won that game as well. But the Bulls picked it up 26-13, and that did wrap up round 8, of course, with 4 teams to force the Highlanders, the Sharks, and the Waratahs out with the bye, which is why we didn't have you on last week. And we've got you on this week with much more Australian presence in the competition. But before we have a look at round 9, of course, we'll be having a look at how everyone's picks went for the weekend, which was a tough one to pick with a few matches that didn't go how anyone thought. So let's check those out. Okay, so here is the leaderboard for the Predictions League. We've got still no change in the top 2 this week, with Caleb42N still leading the way. I think that's the 3rd or 4th week that he's been sitting nicely propped at the top. Axel sits down in second behind him now, so these two are leading the way unchanged now 2 weeks in a row. A new man in at number 3, Devon, joining up 3 spots, had a good week to run straight into there, and Waggers has made the big drop out of the top 3 for him. So a bad round, a tough round to pick as well. All the big names going down. The Driving Maul down 3 spots as well, tough week for him. And even the Scottish Cannon, you're down 1 to 19. What do you put that down to? What's you blaming on this week?
I can't blame the Waratahs this week, unfortunately. I just blame the bad performances. No one could pick the Rebels. Really, I mean, 2% picked the Rebels. In regards to the Lions, I had the Lions, then I chose the Stormers at the last minute, so that's my own fault. And, the Juarez, unfortunately, couldn't get over the line. So I was 4 from 7. I wasn't too upset because I know that there was a lot of upsets during the round. So I was content. At least I didn't drop 1,000 places like I did last weekend, but it's all good.
Yeah, it's tough. Everyone made a lot of mistakes, I think, in that round because, like you say, tough ones to pick. We had the yellow cap down in 25th, up 8 pots for Yal Matu, and he's even passed me as well for the yellow cap, so I'm not happy with him either. I'm down there in 26, so I dropped a couple of spots as well, but it's a wooden spoon. Yes.
Yeah, you're the in the spoon position after 2 rounds, so yeah, glad you sort of found some.
I'm miles away. I'm way up there. I'm right behind you. I'm only 6 spots behind. It's all right. It's the reviewer that needs to watch out because he's down 7, and he's picked up the wooden spoon for round 8. What's happened to Brett? I had him on last week, and he's down 1 place again with another bad round. His picks are similar to mine, so that's probably why. And of course, holding up the foot of the table, M. Kruger still sitting up down the bottom. But with that in mind, congratulations to those at the top. Let's have a look at the leaderboard for, of course, the fantasy team. Okay, so the fantasy team leaderboard looks as follows. There's no changes in the top 3 either here. The awesome transgender Sloths, isn't that a great name? He leads the way at a first spot. Solar Eclipse is still in second. And the great former player, Rapini Thauthan Butho, I wish it was really him, sits in third. And he picked up the yellow cap with Stinks out, so 4th position, getting yellow cap as well. So the top 4 are really creaming the league at the moment. My team, the All Flakes, has gone crashingly well. Now, that's a bad analogy to put together.
Yeah.
But 17th, they're up, smashing is the word I wanted to use, up to 17th. The Cannons team, although he doesn't want to talk about them, they are 27th. He needs to do some work on those guys. Fix them up. And then it's Jack Fullback's team down there with the wooden spoon, having a terrible week in the fantasy team. But still, it is the big boys up top. No one can touch him. So let's have a look at round number 9 and see what our picks are for that. Alrighty, so round 9 kicks off underway in Wellington. It is the Hurricanes who are up against the Brumbies. Now, this is an interesting matchup because the Hurricanes have looked really good over the last recent few weeks as well. They're always a constant threat to score a lot of points. And the Brumbies, on the other hand, have that dramatic loss to the Rebels. Now, the Hurricanes, we all know what they can do. But what I think is going to kill the Brumbies in this match, and let me know if you agree or disagree on this one, but it's a style that these two teams play. Now, the Brumbies, they're a very hard-working team. They work for every metre they gain. Very forward-dominated team. And the Hurricanes are a team that can quickly turn that 40 metres you took 5 minutes to slowly claw up, and they can take that away and wipe it off the floor in about 3 seconds. That is going to be a demoralising thing for the Brumbies. And I think the Canes are going to be far too good. But what's your take on it?
I think it's a tough one, this one. Obviously, there is a big contrast in styles. I think the Brumbies will get over the forwards for the Canes here. I think they'll be going forward every rolling maul. I think the scrum will be dominated by the Brumbies. They might win a lot of penalties off of that. They might score a few rolling mauls tries, which for the Brumbies, without David Pocock, their rolling maul is not as good as it used to be. It used to be such a big weapon last year. It just isn't as good, but still good. It's not as good as last year's, though. Canes obviously looking very, very good. I'm a big fan of Geordie Barrett. If he has made such a big name for himself in the space of 7 to 8 weeks, he could be better than his brother. Like, that's how good he is. Thing what mentioned from Bone Barrow is he needs to watch his discipline. So he's got 3 yellow cards in 2 weeks. It's not good for him if he continues along that track, he may get suspended and potentially be missing Lions matches. So he just needs to watch his discipline, Bone Barrett. But I do think the Canes will get over the line here, maybe by 7-8 points.
He's just trying to rest up because he knows the game's in the bag, you see. So he's just taking a break and sitting on the side. What was your pick? Sorry, Canes by 10. Did you say
7-8 points?
Oh, 7-8 points. Okay, I'm going big. I'm going huge. I've got the Canes by 26 on this one. I think the Brumbies are gonna fall apart just to the styles. I think they're going to work out. I think the Hurricanes are one of the better sides at disrupting the rolling maul as well, especially from a New Zealand point of view. When New Zealand teams, that's not really what they really give a shit about. They want to score tries and score points.
I disagree. I think the Canes always come in the side when they're trying to defend the maul.
They get penalised for it though.
Nah, that's because the New Zealand refs are always there.
It's only illegal if you get caught.
There you go.
They seem to stop it a lot more than the other teams. The Crusaders have got better definitely over recent time, but those two are definitely the better of New Zealand teams that can defend the rolling maul, I think. And it depends, like you say, the ref could ultimately change this match completely, depending on how he'd use it. But obviously, we're going big with the Canes to rip this one up. So I've got the Canes by 26. Cannon is going just under 10, so 7 or 8, and that one should be a good start to the weekend, I think. Right, now this is your area here. We've got the Waratahs up against the Kings. Home game for the Tars, back from the bye. You can have this one all to yourself. How's your team going to go?
I think this is a good game to get the Tars back to where they should be. For the Tars, they've made too many changes. Gibson's made too many changes. He's been chopping and changing his back line, and he's not been able to make a consistent 9-10 combination or, the back three. They're not there. Once he announces his team, Bernard Foley's going to be back. Jake Gordon will be at 9. So once they start building a relationship, the Waratahs will be a significantly better side than what they have been. I mean, they're 2-5. They hadn't lost by too much against the New Zealand teams. I mean, they're in the game against the Crusaders for 65, 70 minutes. The one against the Canes, they had a horrible first half, but that second half was a complete contrast. This week at training, they've gotten out a huge rope. What they've done is they've gotten a huge rope symbolizing how they're trying to all work together, come together, and it's for their defense as well. Their defense has been the worst I've ever seen in a long time. So the Waratahs, they should get off the Kings this game. The following week after that, they've got the Reds. So they've got 2 reasonably easier games, and then they get back into the New Zealand competition. So, I think the Waratahs' season is not over yet. I think they can come back. After they get more consistency in their squad, I think they'll be a much different team than what we've seen on the first 7 rounds or 8 rounds.
Are you serious? They've got a rope?
Yeah.
I find that quite funny. Desperate times for desperate measures, isn't it? Other way around. Now, the teams haven't been named, obviously, when we're recording this, because it's pretty early in the week. But what's your thoughts on how they're using Israel Folau? Personally, I think he's completely wasted in the back line at centre, and is much more better player, much more dangerous, much more of a threat, a fullback. But from your perspective, being your team, your player, what do you think?
I mean, I was a big fan of him being moved end of last year, or 2016. I was a big fan of him moving to centre because I wanted to see him get more ball. But that didn't seem to work last year. He was reasonable at outside centre. I still think he was better at fullback. And then this year's just shown why he needs to be at fullback. I don't think, Andrew Callaway, he's a decent player. I just don't think he's as good as a fullback as Israel Folau is. I like Callaway more on the wing. I like Navu Roro on the wing as well. Rob Horn comes back into the centres this week. So, the Waratahs backline is a completely different team with Rob Horn being in either inside or outside. So I think Folau should move to fullback this week as it's named. And I would expect to see Callaway on one wing, maybe Navu Roro on the other wing, and Rob Horn, Foley, and Jake Gordon. So, I mean, that's a quality backline. It's just we need to build some more consistency around it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what way they go with that. But you've left out the other team here. Have you got any thought about the Kings?
I don't give them too much of a chance. I don't think you do either. They're a great team to watch. They're a great team in their attacking tries. This is going to be a try fest, I think. Really, I don't think either side is going to defend well at all. Obviously, the last 2 games the Kings have had against Australian opposition, they scored 41 points against the Force, but they let in 46. And the same goes for the Reds. They let in 47 points, but they scored 34. So I'm expecting a similar sort of scoreline. I think the Tars should score in the 40s. It's a bit of a bold call if they end up only scoring 2 or 3 tries. But against the team of the quality of the Kings, if the Tars aren't scoring 5, 6, 7 tries, I think there's a problem because the Kings just can't defend. I don't know what it is, but they just cannot defend.
It's a shame because I watched that Kings game last weekend. they've got a lot of potential. And I found the same last year when I watched them. Like, obviously, everyone rips into them and says they're rubbish and they're crap. But if you actually watch them progress over a season, you can actually see them developing and becoming better. And then it comes to the end of the year and they just completely swipe everyone away and they start fresh again. And you're just replaying the same thing. I think if that Kings team could have had consistency, at least of a core of players, they could be a lot better than what we're seeing from them at the moment. I agree with what you say completely. I think it's going to be a big try-fest, just like the last two games involving the Kings. Both teams pretty average defensively as well, especially this year. It's going to be interesting to see where the Waratahs pick their players. But I'm going, and it pains me to say this, but I'm going with the Waratahs by 4.
4, wow.
4. What have you got?
I've got maybe Waratahs by 15 points.
15?
Yeah, I think they'll let in a few tries. I still don't think their defense will be fixed. I mean, you saw the Canes completely tore them to shreds in the first half, and I've never seen a more disjointed Waratahs side in my life. So I don't think you can sort that within 2 weeks. Maybe you can, but I think the Waratahs will be too good here, and I think they'll score some very good tries, particularly off set piece ball.
Now, while I've got you here, just because it's your team, the Waratahs, we're talking about them already, is there any pressure from, in your opinion, or from media in Australia, about Daryl Gibson?
Yes, there is. To be honest, I don't think Gibson has made a big enough impact on the Waratahs side. Ever since Checker was out the door in end of 2015 to take up the Wallaby job, I have not been a fan of Gibson, because I just don't feel like he has shown enough tactically and has made the players progress the way that the champion players in the side should be. Israel Folau has not improved. He's probably gotten even worse over the last 2 years. Maybe that's because teams have started to figure him out, but I don't think Israel Folau has developed as a player as much as he would like. Same goes for Bernard Foley. I think Bernard Foley, he does his best development when he's in the Wallaby setup under Michael Checker. I don't see him progressing the way that he should be as a 10, like Bolden Barrett does, like Owen Farrell does, under their respective coaches. I don't think Darren Gibson offers enough tactically to really show the Waratahs the Waratahs way of rugby. And the thing is, he's a New Zealander. He's a Kiwi. And
he's a former All Black.
He's a former All Black, fair enough. He used to play for the Crusaders, I think. Did he play for the Crusaders?
Yep.
But that's the thing. He's never been around the pathways within New South Wales. He's not around that environment where he truly knows what the New South Wales style of rugby is. And that's the problem that Kiwi coaches have overseas. Some of them work, sure, fair enough. Warren Gatlin, Vern Cotter, stuff like that. But others don't. And I don't think Daryl Gibson has been effective enough because he doesn't understand purely the New South Wales way of playing.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I thought, but you don't see much about it over here. You don't see about anything about Australian teams hardly whatsoever. That's why it's interesting to ask you, because I thought, given a team of that many Wallaby players in it, that much potential for what should be one of the top performing sides in the competition, to be doing that poorly, so quickly the pressure goes on the coach. So I agree. I think he's been pretty subpar, and the Waratahs can probably fairly put some blame onto him for how they've been going as well for that one. But that's enough about the Waratahs. We'll move on to the remaining games of round 9, and it's over to South Africa. Now this one could be interesting, but probably won't be. It's the Lions up against the Jaguares. Now, two teams in really contrasting spots here. The Lions obviously brilliant, amazing in all regards against the Stormers last weekend. The Jaguares, on the other hand, promised a lot, delivered very little. So almost complete opposites to what they should have performed like and what they did perform like. The Lions, amazing defence last weekend. We talked about it already. They were clinical against the Stormers of scoring points. Their big names, their Springbok names, the Yankees and players like that in the back line all stood up amazingly. They had probably the best game I've seen from a Lions team for quite some time. On the other side of things, for the Jaguares, the road is going to be their enemy. Just like we're probably going to see with the Sunwolves, and probably like many people predicted at the start of the season, the amount of travel that they have to do, but it's the fact that they just don't have that home support, and that what they're used to playing, and that homely feeling,
that hostile,
is probably gonna, it's not hostile for them.
No.
It's very homely for them. That's what they love, and they don't have that. And I think that's almost like a 16th man for their team and how they perform. So I've got the Lions by a big one. What's your pick?
Yeah, it's a tough one because the Lions have already been defeated by the Jaguars this year. Obviously, there's different circumstances. I think it's quite early that they're playing. I mean, I can't remember when they were played. Maybe round 3 or round 4.
It's round 3. Yep.
Round 3. It's not been too long since they've played. It's only 6 weeks. I do well and truly do expect the Lions to get up maybe by a good 15 points or so again. I just don't think after the bat of the Lions' big win of the Stormers and then the Jaguars still being on the road, I just can't see it happening.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you what you're saying there. I think last weekend was a turnaround of the Lions' season. I think they've been meandering along a bit, just kind of doing the motions, but last weekend they need to snap into it, and I think they did exactly that. I've got the Lions by 24. So I'm going for a big Lions win over the Jaguars. I think the road isn't for them. I think when they get back home, they'll be back to normal. But the road just doesn't seem to suit them whatsoever in South Africa. Okay, next match. I'll let you have this one. See how you go. Highlanders up against the Sunwolves. Now this one is down here where I live, down in Invercargill, Southland. Good old Southland.
You should head to the game.
Put this into your... I'm contemplating it, hopefully. Seeing if I cannot be working would be a good start.
Yeah.
Now, thing to think about this game, before you say anything, is weather. So add that to your thoughts while you mumble them in your head.
Right. I mean, well, it's going to be freezing there. I don't know how cold it is.
It's not that bad.
It depends on... how cold is it?
It's generally fairly wet down here. Often, sometimes, but just because of where it is, teams, especially from Africa
Tropical.
or Asia, places like that are used to quite high normal temperatures, do struggle. Just even a nice day here, they'll be wrapped up in blankets in the middle of a Saturday afternoon with the sun out. So, yeah, that's a big thing I think for this one.
Absolutely. I mean, can we see this going any other way? I would be interested to see what the odds of this game. I'm going to bring it up on my tipping website. But, the Highlanders, you can't go past them, surely. Ben Smith, Aaron Smith, Lima Sapawanga. I don't know if they're going to rest any players for this match. Maybe they should. I don't know what your point of view on it is. But do we see this going any other way? The Sunwolves, they still... It's unfortunate that they're just not getting as many results as a lot of people are expecting. They got 2 wins last year. They got 1 so far, albeit... at home, but I think they'll be thinking about next year soon enough, because when they're a part of the Australian Conference, when their travel isn't so crazy, when they're more stable, I think the Sunwolves will start to be even better than what they are, and especially they've got to start performing for the Japanese when their World Cup is only a couple years away.
You know what's really funny? Since you mentioned odds, I had a look at the TAB here in New Zealand. Betting head-to-head between the Highlanders and Sunwolves has been suspended. Because the Sunwolves are paying $18 and bets on the Highlanders have been suspended. So that gives you an indication. Highlanders 13 and over is paying $1.04. So that is a big one. I can't see it going any other way. The Highlanders are back from bye. Like you talked about with the Waratahs coming back against the Kings. Nice, easy run into it. I think it's going to be much the same for the Highlanders coming back. Playing down here, of course, they're not under the roof, which, could be a bit of a thing for them as well. They're going to have to play against wind, which is probably going to be some of. They're going to have to play against weather. It's a different atmosphere. I'm sure they play away games and everything like that, but this is a home game in a different atmosphere for them. As for the Sunwolves, they're away from home, and much like we talked about before with the Jaguares and all that, they don't like going away from home. It's that environment back in their home stadium that really is where they belong, where they feel that they can perform the best. I do agree with what you said there about next season is probably their focus. If they can pick up another win this year, would be huge for them. But I don't see it happening down here in the good old Rugby Park, aptly named, and I've got the Highlanders by 38. A big win over the Sunwolves. God, they didn't offer anything. Like, the Sunwolves are really good attacking. I like excitement attacking rugby, but they had nothing against the Crusaders. Nothing at all. And that was an absolute thrashing. So I think possibly that the Highlanders won't defend as well, but attack-wise, I think they'll offer just as much as the Crusaders against the Sunwolves did last weekend. What's your margin on that one?
I'll go 47 points. Same as last weekend.
47.
Yeah.
Ouch. That'll be a good game to go watch. Okay, so we spoke about the Crusaders just before. They're next up in action following the Highlanders Sunwolves game. Now, they're up against the Stormers, the only undefeated team, up against the last beaten team of undefeated sides. This one could still be quite interesting, but we've got to allow for the travel factor coming into this one.
Yeah.
The Crusaders, I think the Crusaders have probably been the team of Super Rugby this year. The slow start was thrown out the window to a degree, and they just seem so hard to break down and beat. You can score against them, but you just can't put them away. They just seem to be that annoying little fly that stays around your room forever. You just can't get rid of them. And when you got a team like the Stormers travelling all the way from South Africa, coming over to New Zealand, where they hate to be anyway, and they'll just be gutted that they lost that crunch match, such a huge match in their season, to the Lions, that they lost that one. And it just all fell apart for them last weekend. Their attack fell away. They were shut down by good defence, and I think they're going to find that again this week against the Crusaders, that they're going to get shut down by good defence. And it could go pear-shaped very quickly for the Stormers. I've got a Crusaders win. What have you got?
I've got to be the same. I mean, it's almost impossible to tip against the Crusaders this year, and you know they've got after this game against the Stormers, they've still got easier matches as well. They got the Cheetahs over in South Africa, and then they've got the Bulls. So they've got two relatively easier South African matches compared to the Lions and the Stormers and stuff if they were playing away. Stormers obviously got to travel whatever it is, 20,000 kilometers or whatever it is, to come over to New Zealand. It's almost a 20-hour round trip. So going to be very difficult for them. Stormers will be very disappointed with their performance last week, obviously. I still think they'll be hurting from losing that big South African derby. So, I don't see anything different here. I think it may be a closer match than some people are expecting. But again, I think the Stormers' form is a bit over-exaggerated based on the quality of opposition they have played.
Have you got a margin?
Go 11 points to the Crusaders.
11 points? 11 points to the Crusaders. I'm going very similar. I'm going Crusaders by 18. I think more the question here is going to be how much rather than who, because I just can't see the Crusaders losing to just about any team that they're playing. Like I say, they've got a pretty friendly fixtures list coming up in a lot of their matches, so it's going to be hard to see them losing anything in the next few weeks as well, which is going to be quite daunting if they go 12 rounds undefeated. That will just be ridiculous. And the Stormers, well, they've got a tough trip now after that loss as well. So we're both going Crusaders. Next up, this is interesting. I'll leave this one to you. Force versus Chiefs.
Yes. Difficult one. Very difficult one to call. Obviously, a lot of the talk at the moment is around the rest and Force and own the Force. I shout out to Brett Hartley, but he tagged us both in an article where, the Force have some remarkable amount of money that's being put behind them at the moment by big businessmen and fans. So, I think the mood over in Perth is probably improved from the last win against the Kings. Obviously, that day of the announcement, the Sunday 2 weeks ago, 1 week or past Sunday, obviously Matt Hodgson came out and explained the Force's circumstances and how they'll all be disappointed and stuff like that. There's a lot of off-field again with the Force, and will this have the same repercussions like it did for the Rebels? Obviously, the Rebels got the win over the leading team in the Australian Conference, the Brumbies. It's difficult. It's hard to tip past the Chiefs. But again, the New Zealand sides always seem to have a bit of a struggle over in Perth. I don't know what it is. Is it maybe the travel factor? But if you look at the Sailors, if you have a look at the Hurricanes, they've always seemed to have a bit of a speed bump against the Force.
Yeah, that's true. They've definitely picked up that banana skin reputation over there as well, which is always worrying. I think the Force need to evaluate this as a really good opportunity. Back from South Africa, back of a pretty average 40 minutes or so against the Cheetahs, so there's definitely room for them to attack them here. There's definitely that hope, and like I say, all this off-field stuff, which, like we talked about last week, is ever going to go one or two ways. We either help them and motivate them and, you know, build them up, or it's going to crush them down. We could talk about this whole Super Rugby cutting team things 100 times over, 1 million times a day.
Go and watch a debate on my channel if you haven't already.
Yeah, who won that poll?
Yeah, it was actually tied if you include my vote for myself.
Oh, rubbish. It was 52-48.
Yeah, but I couldn't vote for myself. Did you vote for yourself?
Yep.
There you go. So it would be a tie.
I'm honest. I'll say I voted for myself. I'm going Chiefs by 14. What have you got?
Do I throw a spanner in the works or do I not? It's hard here. I think it's a real opportunity for the Force. If the Force get up in this match, this is where Sansa would have a big, lots of problems. I think, I'm almost wanting to tip the Force, but I've got to go the Chiefs by 4 points.
Do you really think Sansa's going to give a shit? Like, we've seen an amazing 40 minutes by the Cheetahs. We've seen an amazing match by the Rebels. But do they really care?
If the people in Perth get out, if the Force get a record crowd and they end up getting the win over the Chiefs, I think that would maybe turn a few heads at Sansa. You've got to say that's got to have some effect.
I would hope it would. But hope is running pretty dry with those guys, to be completely fair. All the things, because they can easily look at that and say, well, yeah, their team's getting the chop. Why wouldn't they go out and support them for the last, 5 weeks of the competition? If they weren't getting cut, how many people would have turned up? How would have that team performed? There's always a negative way to look at everything, and I see them looking at everything and just going, well, this has been the kick up the arse these teams have wanted and needed to actually perform, but it's too little too late for them. I don't even know if they watch Super Rugby, to be honest. With some of the comments they say and some of the things they decide on, do they even watch their product? Is what I often wonder. While we're on, what do you think? Do you think they care? What do you think about that?
They've got to. I mean, like we said in the discussion or the debate, the Force represents half of an Australian country. It gives them another time zone to work within the competition. It gives them, the amount of support that the Force have had over the last few weeks has never been so big. There's been so many fans that have come out and said blah, blah, blah and support financially. The Force fans are crazy. They're the most passionate fans in Australia, maybe even the Super Rugby outside of maybe Argentina. But will that make a difference financially? Are they stable enough? That's going to be Sansa's point of view. Sansa will say, well, you got 8,000 people last weekend. You had 7,000 in the match against the Reds. What's the point of keeping you in the competition when you're not getting crowds over 10,000?
That's what I mean. So do they just look at the bank account, or do they actually watch their product as well? It's who really knows. But look, we've already talked about it. We'll probably talk about it again. Yeah. Probably have a debate Mark 2. Who knows? But we're moving on from that. I've got the Chiefs by 14. You were going them by 4, were you?
Yeah, closer than a lot of people think.
Yeah, I think it'll be fairly close to, yeah. Second to last match, it is the Bulls versus the Cheetahs. Now, this one's interesting. Two teams who, again, like we've seen in other matches, are different sides of the ledger. The Bulls, expected to perform pretty averagely. Now they're back again, returning home. The Cheetahs, a great first half, and they fell away. The thing with the Bulls that worries me the most about how they're going to perform is they're too reliant, like we spoke of just before, too reliant on one key player especially, but a couple throughout their team that hold their team together like a big glob of glue throughout the whole team. The Bulls are actually copping a lot of criticism for their coach as well at the moment. They've come out saying that they're 100% full support of him. A lot of the fans and media are calling for him to go because of the style of play and the way the team's playing. That could be an interesting point to watch over the rest of the season and see how long that goes on for, how long, if their performances don't pick up, that they keep supporting their coach. The Cheetahs, we've talked about the Cheetahs a little bit already. That performance over 40 minutes was great. It was the Cheetahs that you expect. Where in the second 40, I think just blown away by a better Chiefs team. But if they can do that for 80 minutes, and if they can do that and shut down Pollard, they could easily win this game. They could quite easily win this game. When you can concentrate on attacks, pretty easy against the Bulls when they have so few marquee game-winning players like that. And for that reason, I'm going with all you guys out there that watch this. Cheetahs by 8. What about you?
Oh, I've got to disagree. I think the Bulls will get up. I think unless they have a performance like they did against the Sunwolves, I don't see them losing in Pretoria. I think the rabid home fans will get them over the line here. I think the Cheetahs fans and the Cheetahs, the talk of the towns, obviously. The Cheetahs, the other team in the South Africa that's going to be cutting Sansa, blah, blah, blah. There's too much happening around the Cheetahs that I just think the Bulls were more stable and just, I guess, found the form against the Jaguars will get over the line here. I'll go Bulls by 6 points.
Oh, still going close. Which is interesting. I think it's going to be. I think it might be a decent game, but probably involve a lot of goal kicking and a lot of kicking in general. I think, but could be entertaining if the Cheetahs turn up like they did in that early part against the Chiefs. Could be a good match for the closest of the contest at least. Right, one game to go. Final game, mega Super Rugby preview for round 9. Sharks versus the Rebels. Now the Sharks are back from the bye. The Rebels, of course, back from their groundbreaking win against the Brumbies. Biggest win of the season for the Rebels. They had the match you've never seen from them so far. What was that?
Only win for the Rebels this season.
Only win for the Rebels, yeah. Well, biggest win of their probably decade so far for them, the way they've been playing.
I disagree. They've beaten every New Zealand side, at least, the Rebels.
I think at this time, right now, that would possibly be their biggest win, given what is happening.
No, we can have another debate for another day.
They needed that win more than anything else,
yeah,
I think,
absolutely.
especially in recent time, anyway. So the Rebels, yeah, they've got a lot backing on them now. They've got a lot of momentum,
yes.
Even momentum following along. So they're going good. They'll be eager to come here, but of course they're travelling away to play the Sharks, who have looked overall a pretty decent Super Rugby side. And they're going to be hard to stop, I think. They're not the flashy Lions with the big attack, but they're very good defensively, and they score points when they have to, which makes a winning team. I'm going the Sharks for that one. Purely travel and purely just that momentum behind the Rebels can only last so long. It's that adrenaline rush. It's going to run out and it's going to pop like a balloon. If the Sharks get off and just take a chomp out of it, it'll kill that momentum that they're following over to South Africa with. So that's mine. What about yours?
It's hard to go past the home team in this situation. The Rebels, I think they kept back Toby Smith this week, if I remember reading an article. If Toby Smith comes back into the Rebels side, that's a huge in for them. The Sharks, they've looked good. They've looked really good outside of their loss to the Reds in the first day of the season, or first game of the season. So I think the Sharks should get up here. If the Rebels can cause one of the biggest upsets in Super Rugby history, go ahead, be my guest. I think now that would create some havoc again, and they'll get a lot of smiles for the supporters back in Melbourne, but yeah, it's hard to go past the South African team here.
2 in a row. Imagine what that would do. That would be immense. That would be just crazy. So you pick a margin for the Sharks?
14.
Oh, that's mine was 12. You're almost copying me. That's all right. So we've both got Sharks wins on that. We've agreed pretty much on just about all of them, really. A couple of different ones we've disagreed on. But that is it. That is round 9. That was quite a good discussion on round 9. A mega. Yep, it has been a mega. A mega preview of round 9 of Super Rugby. Thanks, Cannon, for joining me. John, I'll give yourself a shout out, your channel, any social medias for you?
Absolutely. The Cornflake will do the business in the comment section below, or the what's it called? The description below. He'll leave my link to my channel. He'll leave the link to my Twitter there. If you want to come and join the Super Rugby banter during the weekend, be our guest. We love it. It's going to be a great weekend. I think it's hard to go past the last two rounds. Round 7 and round 8 has been some great matches of rugby, and hopefully this is exactly the same for round 9.
See, isn't this the sort of thing that Sanzal wants? Like what round 8 was? You know, no one picked, you know, a perfect round. No one in our group of predictions picked a perfect round. I think the top pick got one wrong, which would have been the Rebels, obviously. But that unpredictability is what Super Rugby is, and that's with all 18 teams. But I'm not going to go any further. Thanks for joining me. I hope you've all enjoyed the video today. Thanks again to the Cannon for chipping in and having his say on the sides, and we'll see you all again next week for round 10. Until then, take care.